Testing dashboards and complex reports. Testing dashboards and complex reports can be fiddly and time-consuming. Dashboards have to deal with multi-dimensional sets of data. You need test data that reflects each of the data combinations. Relying on production data is a fool's errand. What I mean by that is you can spend an awful lot of time trying to hunt for data, and then when you use it, you're not actually really sure if it's testing the correct combinations. By creating a model of the data combinations and linking them to synthetic test data generation, you can quickly create the data dimensions. When dashboards change, you can quickly add the new combinations. So VIP, there's a lot to VIP in the DevOps world, but today we're just going to be having a look at the test modeler component and the test data management component. So today we're going to take a look at a little CRM dashboard. We're going to explore it a little bit, understand it, and have a look at the data sitting behind it. We're going to then model the combinations of potential dimensions. We're going to link that to our test data generation engine. We're going to run the test data and combinations and then test it. And then afterwards, once we've done a little exploration and found a bug or two, we're going to add in some extra data to look a little deeper at some of the problems. So this is our splendid CRM system. We're going to have a look at the opportunities and how they roll through into the dashboard. So let's have a look at the dashboard. Now we have a little bit of data in here already, and we can see there's different dimensions, month, source by outcome, sales stage. So we'll have a quick look at the opportunities. Now we can see there are 3 opportunities already in there. And when we take a look at the create opportunity, we can see these dimensions that are used in the dashboard. So you'll see here the type, the lead source, the sales stage, obviously the date, and then who it's been assigned to as well. Now if we go and look at the opportunities that are already there. Now there are 1, 2, 3. We could put the data in through the front end using something like some of our Selenium features or scripting, or we could actually put it in the back end using data generation. Now I'm relatively familiar with these tables, so let's go and have a look at them. And you can see that they're sitting in the back end database. There are actually 3 tables that we care about. There's the leads, there's the opportunities, and then there's the table that sits in between them, which are the leads and the opportunities. So if we look at the opportunities, you can see in here we have the lead source, the opportunity type, etc. So this is the data that's sitting in the back-end database. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually synthetically build a generator to create these 3 tables. So the way we do this, we go into VIP and we're going to generate a spreadsheet which is going to be used to configure our data generation. So we're connecting to the splendid database. We're going to build a data creation spreadsheet, which I'll show you in a moment. So we click generate. So these are the tables in the database. We're not going to generate for all of them, obviously, so we're just going to uncheck pick opportunities, leads opportunities, and leads, and then we're done. Once we click on that, we're going to create a spreadsheet which we can use to configure the data generation. So this is the spreadsheet that gets created, and this is where you define the type of data you'd like to create. Now we've created 3 tabs which are associated with the 3 tables. There's leads, leads opportunities, and opportunities. Now before we get into the detail of those, we're just going to create some pre-process variables, and these are in effect the parameters, because what we're thinking about here is we need to create lots of different types of data. We've already, by having a look at the data, had a look at opportunity types. We can play around and move the user that's created the opportunity as well. The sales stage, the lead source. Now one of the things I'm going to do is to look at the different ranges of data. Quite often with the dashboard, if you have one value which is very, very high range, it can actually skew the dashboard and it looks very weird. What I'm going to also be doing is when I put the data in, is I'm going to segment it by month, so I can sort of have a look month by month to see the effect on the dashboard. So we've defined those as variables, and then if we go to say something like opportunities, all we're doing is just linking those parameters in like so. Now for the most part you don't really have to do too much with this spreadsheet. You can either pick up sample data from some analysis of the tables, or you could just say just pick up data directly from the target data, which looks so you'll get very similar data to the data already exists. We also have a very powerful set of test data functions, which allows you to do all sorts of clever stuff to be able to create addresses, names, invoices, all sorts of financial terms, etc., etc. So that's kind of how you define it. And I've gone through here. We've got in this case, we're using GUIDs as the IDs. Quite often use identities or sequences. And if you look at leads opportunities, you can see here that we are tying together the opportunity ID, which is created in the opportunities, and the leads ID would be passed over to that. So you're creating business, you're creating data which has business integrity, or in this case it's actually foreign key enforced integrity. So that's the definition of the spreadsheet. Now what we're going to do is do some modeling and actually create different combinations of sets of dimensions, or in this case parameters. Alright, so we're up in Modeler. We've created we're in Splendid CRM. We're in a folder called Dashboard. Now the first thing we do is we just take that spreadsheet and we look at the parameters, and we're going to create a little link, and this is how we're going to connect up our model with our test data generator. And here you can see the parameters that we need to set when it comes to creating the data, and we're going to link the data variables to the actual parameters. Now if we then go over to the model itself, now it took me about 10 minutes to do this, but basically what I've done here is I've come through, and for each particular, for opportunity type, new and existing, admin users, admin, non-admin, sales stages, there's a bunch of sales stages, again we just pick them straight up off the form, lead source, and then we've got small amount and wide range. Now if we take a look at the test data and look at the assignment and click on this, you'll see the range is between 100 and 1,000, whereas for this one we're going between 100 and 100,000, so we're going to get a much broader range of data. And then as you click down through, you'll see we're setting different variables like so. Now if we click on here and look at the test automation, again we just look at the actions, what you'll see is that we've taken our variables and all we've done is just map them directly to the parameters. So the parameters, think of that as the actual thing that's going to do the work, which is going to create the data that we need, and the rest of it as the logic, which is going to come up with particular combinations. Now let's look at our test generation. Now what I've done here is I've created 4 different sets of coverage that I'm interested in. Minimal, wide range. Now minimal refers to we're going to do the minimum amount of testing, so we're going to just basically make sure that we get 1 prospecting, 1 email, 1 admin, 1 new. So we're going to have a very low number of test cases. If we look at the coverage parameters, we're going to say we're going to ignore any low range because we're interested in minimal wide range. The amount of wide range, the coverage is low. You can set this to low, medium, high, and exhaustive, and that's going to in effect give us the settings, which is going to cover that. And if we look at the test cases that have been created for this, and if we click on them, you'll see we're pinned on the wide range because we said ignore small amount and do learn that. So that means that we're only going to be focusing on that wide range. And you can see then if we did something like max small range and look at the coverage techniques there, we'd ignore our wide range. For our low range we're going to go exhaustive, and again we're going to end up with, I think there's about 600 different potential combinations. Now these are in effect looking at all the different combinations of data. Again, this kind of depends on, if you were doing Selenium testing, this might take a little time to create this, but as we're going to put them directly into the database, it'll just take a few seconds to load them up. Now once we've got our test cases, what you now do is you just need to need to connect this up with Automation Controller, and Automation Controller is actually going to synthetically create the data. So let's go and have a look at the files that we've downloaded. So what I've done is download the 4 different coverage techniques. So let's look at something like max small range, and in here you'll see a thing called data template, and let's just have a quick look at that. And what you'll see here is that we've created different sets of combinations of data. You can see got opportunity types, coverage, sales type, lead source, ranges are varying, decision makers, qualification, etc. So each one of these folders in effect is a different set of coverage. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run one at a time through the different coverage, and then we're going to look to see the effect on the dashboard. So there's the dashboard in the background, and here we have a little command prompt open. At the moment we're just going to run it on the command line. You can obviously run it through the VIP scheduler if you want to. We're going to call it Data Gen 1 so we can just know what we're up to, and we've picked one of the coverage definitions, which is min small range, and we're also going to put it into the first month of 2019. So we just fire that off and we wait for a moment. So that's completed. Now before we go and look at the dashboard, we're just going to have a pop into the back-end database. We've got a little query here, and what we're interested in is just running to see the combinations of lead source, sales stage and opportunity types. We'll just run this, and you'll see that we're kind of building up a reasonable set of different combinations or dimensions that we can have a look at. And if we then have a look, we just refresh the dashboard, you can see we're starting to fill it up. Here our pipeline is starting to come through. Our lead source is looking pretty good on that bottom dashboard actually, that's pretty good. And then we'll just pipeline by month. We just need to go and have a look at 2019 here. So we'll just do a search on that one. And you can see here we're filling this up with a different range. Now what I'm going to do now is complete this for the 4 different types of coverage that I've got, and then we'll have a final look at the dashboard. So that's the last one run. Now let's have a look at our dashboard. We'll start at the bottom. We can see the pie chart with the lead source spread about with pipeline is looking very good. Looks like that's working fine. Now what we've done is we've got the 4 different months, and we can actually see that number 1 is basically, it's got a very narrow range, as does 3, but then we put a larger number of opportunities in 2 and 4. But you can see the dashboard doesn't really work very well because of the spread of range and the volumes. So we're going to have to work out some way of kind of improving that from a look and feel. If we look at some of the filters here now, if we go and look at the filters and we look, say, at admin and do search, that seems to be working fine. So we're doing okay on our filters. However, if we look at some of these, it looks like we've got some missing data in needs analysis. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run some extra generations and have a look to see if I can work out why these aren't showing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick value proposition, and I've created a new coverage definition, and basically setting some of the filters and features, I'm kind of forcing all of the potential combinations available through value proposition. So we're going to create a whole bunch of data, and every single one will be in the value proposition. I've cleared down the majority of data that we previously created. Now I just run this, and that's then going to create the data that we need. Now if we go and have a look at the dashboard, so now you can see the dashboard here. All the other stuff has come in fine, but the sales stage, it's showing a total pipeline of 1.3 million, but there are no bars in here. The date range looks okay, so something's not right. Now I'm just going to go in. Now I'm just going to go and have a look at the actual view that's been run. So let's just have a look at it. Now this is actually the SQL that was run to populate this, the dashboard itself, and all I did was just have a quick look in the back end of the database, and I found this, and sure enough it's finding a total. There it is, the 1.3 million. It's found the list order, the user is admin. So the data is being retrieved successfully, and again if we look at the dashboard you can see that the pipeline's great, but it's basically not showing a bar. So I would class this as a bug and then pass this back to the developer to have a look at it. So to summarize, model the transform dimension logic, in other words the potential combinations. Design your coverage, which could be minimal to exhaustive. You could save time by creating data rather than finding it. The problem with finding data is it actually takes a long time to hunt around for a particular piece of data. And then the other problem then is that when you get a new refresh, maybe another copy of master production data, that particular data scenario, that particular spike on a graph may not exist. So it's very difficult to plan your tests when you don't have a stable data environment. Updating tests quickly when a requirement changes. So if you change your requirement, you have to go back through all of your old tests to make sure they make sense, and that can be very, very time consuming. You can increase quality by using mathematics to create your combination, not missing any scenarios. You can see that we actually had a scenario which caused us actually a problem in the demo we showed you. And then another one is to show users earlier what dashboards would look like, as opposed to having to wait until you create the data entry systems or the APIs to load the data up. And that can be very useful in a development lifecycle. So thanks for your time. If you would like to trial the software, feel free to get in touch at curiositysoftware.ie.